One of the biggest mysteries in the technology world is the identity of Satoshi Nakamoto, the computer programmer who invented the digital currency Bitcoin.
It's getting down to decision time on a Bitcoin ETF, finally.
In 2021, 50 years later, with El Salvador, is this the beginning of a return to a hard money standard, thanks to El Salvador and Bitcoin, Lawrence? Right, but there is a cost with gold, and you've got assaying the gold to make sure it's real by a third party that you have to trust, which is a huge problem. You've got storage, that's costly. You've got other costs involved in gold, which I would posit exceeds the de minimis costs of Bitcoin on the network. You know, one of the things we've observed here in the last 20 or 30 years is this model, this Keynesian model, which is the central bank model, the Greenspan put, remember that from Alan Greenspan, that no market can go down 1% or 2% without the interventionism of the Fed stepping in to flood the system with more Keynesian credit. We have a lot of collusion and cooperation amongst the global central banks because they're all on a fiat standard. Not a single bank is on a gold standard or other than a fiat money standard. So they all collude with each other. There's never been a taper in 40 years. You know, the net aggregate global monetary policy has always been expansionary. And it's just been, we see it on the charts. It's not hard to follow. Okay, into this mix comes Bitcoin. And now we've got El Salvador that's gone on the Bitcoin standard. They're mining Bitcoin with their volcano. They just mined their first Bitcoin with their virtually free volcano energy. This is going to be the only, let me say it this way. In 1971 was the beginning of the fiat standard. In 2021, 50 years later, with El Salvador, is this the beginning of a return to a hard money standard, thanks to El Salvador and Bitcoin, Lawrence?
Well, to do magic, you need either cards or coins, right? Well, I've got this little tiny coin here. But you know how like the biggest forces in the universe are quite tiny. This coin is going to save the day, the $1 trillion platinum coin.
No, again?
Of course, $1 trillion, 12, 13 years later is not nearly as much as it was back in 2008. Back in 2008, the richest man in the world was like Warren Buffett, and he was worth like $40 billion. Now it's Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and Bernard Arnault, and they're worth like $200 billion. So it would have to be at least $4 trillion. But, you know, the headline here reads, to prevent a potentially catastrophic debt default, an increasingly vocal chorus is saying that the Treasury should issue a small platinum coin, give it a value of $1 trillion, and deposit it at the Fed. So, Max, my $1 trillion coin is special. So they go for a mere trillion. I'm going to call it a sextillion coin, right? We're going to go full sextillion because trillion is very Dr. Evil. As we said, it's not that much anymore because you see $1 trillion only has 12 zeros. A sextillion coin has 21 zeros on it. That could rescue the entire global financial system.
Wow, we're going the other way of Venezuela. They're lopping zeros off their currency. In America, they seem to be dedicated to adding zeros on. But I have a question for you. Would like to get your thoughts on this.
Sure.
This idea that minting a trillion coin is somehow going to mitigate the problems of the debt that America has and the debt default. Why can't we just be honest about this and say that America has defaulted on its sovereign obligation? Because $1 trillion, as you point out, with the roughly $30 trillion in exposure, and if you add the unfunded liabilities of Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, it's closer to $300 trillion. You know, and they could just as easily say they're minting a $300 trillion coin as they say that they're minting a $1 trillion coin. They still believe, Stacey, as I understand it, that this is a stopgap measure because at any moment now, and they've been saying this now for 30 years, but at any moment now, the GDP is going to start up skyrocketing enough so that incomes will go up, so that the tax revenues collected, which is approximately just under $3 trillion last year, to start paying down the debt. I think that's what they think, that they're just doing a stopgap measure. They still believe that at some point, taxpayers are going to pay down that $300 trillion. So you're suggesting that this $1 trillion coin is just a huge David Copperfield-like misdirection so that people don't focus on the magic of money printing to create the billionaires and the deca-billionaires. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, in a kind of Leo Strauss way. Back in the, from the Chicago school, 1950s, his thing was that basically the deplorables and the masses are really too stupid to be told this stuff, and it's better just to be kind to them by misdirecting and entertaining them with various television programs, movies.
You're saying that the policymakers in the Federal Reserve Bank and Joe Biden, the president, thinks America is so freaking stupid that they can make them believe that picking up a worthless, shiny, round object and going hocus pocus over it magically turns it into $1 trillion that they can deposit at the Federal Reserve or the Treasury to somehow mitigate that $300 trillion debt crisis?
Yes, that is pretty much monetary policy.
Quick, draw $1 trillion platinum coin for Winky Dink so that he can save America. That's really cynical on the part of the policymakers out there, who don't seem to care about the collateral damage of their fraud and their really bad magic and Winky Dink show. Gosh, golly, I'm upset.
Most Americans today believe the stock market is rigged, and they're right. New research shows insider trading is everywhere. So far, no one seems to care. No one seems to care.
The job of journalism is to highlight these things in a way that would get people to care, right? I mean, they're saying that the markets are completely fraudulent, and instead of digging into more specifically how and the damage this causes, they're shrugging their shoulders and saying, what's fraud these days in America? There's nothing I've said many times, the business model of America is fraud. And if you took fraud out of America's business life, you would have nothing left except a bunch of, Native American reservations in North Dakota somewhere laughing hysterically, and they predicted the whole thing.
Well, the thing is this is a cantillionaire economy. And though the cable news will say that most people are deplorable and dumb, the fact is they see what's right in front of them. They see the emperor has no clothes. They see the Cantillon effect.
So the second point is that it's not that they don't care. It's that the vast majority of Americans are desperately trying to mimic and ape the fraud that they see being committed by Goldman Sachs, Jamie Dimon, all the Wall Street bankers, the Federal Reserve Bank, 2 of them caught for insider trading just in the last few weeks, right? So the Americans, it's not that they don't care. They're like, how do we cash in on this inside information? And so they're desperate because inflation now is creeping in and they can't afford the food, the shelter, the clothing and the energy anymore. Their only way to survive is to commit fraud, and that's when an empire truly collapses. Is when the majority of the population, like we have in America today, in order to survive, they have to commit fraud. It's like Victor Hugo's masterpiece Les Miserables. The street urchins to survive had to steal, and that's the great dramatic course of this great novel. And in America, the majority of Americans, in order to survive, they must steal. And the media this media saying, it's okay to steal, we'll absolve you from stealing and be the worst moral, unethical piece of garbage you possibly can, America, because that's the only way you're going to survive. Since the central banks over the past 30 years and getting worse with each successive Fed chair has failed to do their duty by raising rates in the face of too much money printing or inflation, they have created this situation right now. And since they never raised rates, what they did was they transferred trillions of dollars to a few oligarchs in America, and they took the entire country and they threw it under the bus.